Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a completely mind-bending look into the hidden behavioral forces that actually dictate financial success. Most of us are taught that money is just a spreadsheet, right? You earn this much, you spend that much, it's just math. But what if building wealth literally has almost nothing to do with your intelligence and absolutely everything to do with your behavior? Let's dive into the invisible game of money.
To really get this, we have to look at the ultimate paradox. Picture a brilliantly successful tech executive. We're talking about a genius who designed key Wi-Fi components in his 20s, sold multiple companies worth millions. But get this, he would literally hand someone a few $1,000s in cash, tell them to buy gold coins, and then skip those coins into the Pacific Ocean just for entertainment. Now, contrast him with a guy named Ronald Read. Read was a janitor. He swept floors and repaired cars at a rural gas station in Vermont. Yet, when Reed passed away, he quietly left behind an $8 million fortune. The tech executive? He eventually went completely broke. The humble janitor died a multimillionaire. Seriously, how is that even possible in a world where we're told that being smart equals getting rich?
Well, as Sherlock Holmes famously said, the world is full of obvious things which nobody by any chance ever observes. And this completely shatters the myth that IQ equals wealth. The tech genius had all the formal education, all the raw intelligence, the status, but financial success? It's not a hard science based on math or physics. It's a soft skill. It is based entirely on human psychology. When we think about traditional finance, we immediately picture the visible spreadsheets, the data, the complex math, the rapid-fire calculations, and the high IQ optimization of tax brackets and compounding interest. But that's just the surface. What really moves the needle is the invisible psychology. It's the sheer panic you feel checking your portfolio at 2 in the morning during a market crash. It's the ego that drives someone to buy things they can't afford just to impress people they don't even like. It's the silent, hidden behaviors that govern what you do when nobody else is watching. So let's look at the first core idea here, Section 1. Luck and risk are siblings, the invisible forces of wealth. We absolutely love studying the habits of wildly successful people, but we tend to completely ignore the invisible randomness behind them. Take Bill Gates, for example. Undeniably brilliant, incredibly hardworking, but he also had the unbelievable luck to attend Lakeside School in 1968. That was literally one of the only high schools on the entire planet that had a computer at the time. But there's a really dark mirror to this story. His best friend, Kent Evans, was just as brilliant, shared the exact same business mind, and they planned to conquer the world together. Tragically, Kent died in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated high school. Think about the odds. The chance of Bill Gates ending up at a high school with a computer was roughly 1 in a million. The odds of a high school student dying on a mountain? Also roughly 1 in a million. Both Bill and Kent experienced 1 in a million odds, but working in exact opposite directions. Reality is just incredibly messy and totally unpredictable. So the crucial takeaway here is that humility really matters. Luck and risk are essentially doppelgangers. They're the exact same force. The reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces way outside of just individual effort. You're just one person in a massive game with 7 billion other people and infinite moving parts. Because of that, we have to respect luck and risk equally. We need to give ourselves and others a little grace when looking at successes and failures. Moving on to Section 2, getting wealthy versus staying wealthy, the goalpost problem. Look, anyone can get lucky once and figure out how to make a bunch of money, but holding on to it, that is an entirely different game. Let's look at Jesse Livermore. He was one of the greatest stock traders of his time. In the booming 1920s, he made a massive fortune. And then, during the catastrophic 1929 Wall Street crash, while everyone else was ruined, he made billions overnight by shorting the market. He felt totally invincible, untouchable. But just 4 years later, by 1933, driven by the massive ego of just one more deal and taking larger and larger bets, he lost absolutely everything. He went deep into debt and vanished. He had completely mastered the get-rich game, but completely failed the stay-rich game. If I had to summarize financial success in a single word, it would be this: survival. Survival is the ability to stick around for a long time without wiping out. See, getting money requires taking risks, being super optimistic, and swinging for the fences. But keeping money, that requires the exact opposite. It requires a healthy dose of fear. It requires frugality. It requires an acceptance that past success doesn't guarantee future success whatsoever. Survival is just the ability to stick around long enough for compounding interest to actually do its magic. Which leads to the biggest takeaway from this section. The absolute hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Think about it.
If your expectations rise faster than your results, there's literally no logic in striving for more. You'll just end up taking increasingly reckless risks just to get a quick hit of satisfaction. Learning to look around and honestly say, this is enough, that is the ultimate financial superpower.
This brings us to Section 3, Looking Rich versus Being Rich, the Illusion of Wealth. Modern capitalism has made faking it until you make it a highly cherished, massively profitable industry. I want to introduce you to a concept called the man in the car paradox. Think about this for a second. When you see someone pull up at a stoplight in a flashy $100,000 Ferrari, do you actually look at the driver and think, wow, that guy is so cool? No, almost never. Instead, you imagine yourself in the driver's seat, assuming that if you drove that car, people would admire you. Everyone is using their visible wealth to signal that they should be admired, but everyone is completely bypassing the person sending the signal. There's this great story in our source material about a guy named Roger. So Roger drove a brand new Porsche. Naturally, everyone assumed he was totally loaded. Then, one day, Roger suddenly shows up in an old, beat-up Honda. When someone asked him what happened, he casually mentioned that the Porsche was repossessed because he defaulted on his loan. Our world is full of Rogers. When you see someone buy a $100,000 car, the only absolute hard data point you have about their finances is that they have $100,000 less than they did before. The spending is completely visible, but the suffocating debt, that's hidden. And this is such a profound realization. Wealth is what you don't see. Wealth is the diamond necklace not bought. It's the first-class upgrade you declined. It's the investment account sitting quietly in the background, untouched for decades. We constantly judge financial success by outward appearances because, well, we can't see other people's bank accounts. But real wealth is invisible. We really need to explicitly contrast being rich with being wealthy. Rich is your current visible income. It's buying the fancy cars and the big houses. It's loud. But wealth? Wealth is hidden income not spent. It's an option not yet taken. The famous singer Rihanna nearly went bankrupt a few years ago, and she actually sued her financial advisor over it. The advisor's response was legendary. He essentially said in court, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money? Which brings us to this incredibly powerful realization. The only way to be wealthy is to not spend the money that you do have. It's not just the only way to accumulate wealth, it's the very definition of it. If you want genuine respect and admiration from people, you are not going to get it from horsepower or visible spending. You get it from humility, kindness, and empathy. All right, let's look at the final part of our explainer, Section 4, the highest form of wealth, the ultimate luxury. So if real wealth is invisible and it requires all this saving and surviving, what does all this sacrifice actually buy you? Well, there was a fascinating study by a gerontologist who interviewed 1,000 elderly Americans to find their most important life lessons. Out of 1,000 people at the absolute end of their lives, not a single one said that to be happy you should work harder to buy more things. Not one. So what did they value? Quality friendships, being part of a community, spending unstructured quality time with their kids. True wealth provides the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. Control over your time is quite literally the highest dividend that money pays. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to reflect on. Are you playing the invisible game of money just to look rich to people you don't even know, or are you playing it to actually be free? Think about your own invisible behaviors and really ask yourself what kind of wealth you're trying to build. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.